over and above what the legitimate regulator has created. They are also asking you for money. There are registration fees and annual fees that you must pay for you to remain an agent in those estates. We spoke to you when we met with you in Kempton Park. Those of you who were there, we made a commitment that we are going to be dealing with those people quite aggressively. And the process has begun. We have started communicating with them, telling them what we think is not right. But fortunately, South Africa is not just a banana republic, so there are laws to abide by. So we are following legal procedures to deal with the problems that we are facing. But we have also started to involve the Competitions Commission, because we believe some of these practices are not competitive, that they are very limiting, that they are monopolistic in nature. So we want them to come on board and to also help us open the doors for all of you to sell wherever you want to sell. So if you are an estate agent in Sentin and you are tired of selling for the big people and the rich, the who is who in Sentin, and you want to go and sell in Mamelodi, nobody should stop you. You should be able to go there and say, here in Mamelodi, I see an opportunity. I see that people are beginning to build houses for their parents. They are beginning to invest in their townships, and therefore there's an opportunity for us to make money. We want to participate also. You should be allowed to go and do business there. And the vice versa is true. Finally, I want to talk about the regulations. I'm indirectly responding to the minister. So, since the passing of the legislation, the Property Practitioners Regulatory Act, we've equally had regulations passed, but we've encountered a lot of problems. We've been discussing with you on the sides about limitations on the regulations and things that perhaps were excluded by mistake and things that needs to be added there. We have since done some work. We now have a draft of the new regulations that we want to go and present before the minister. Part of our responsibility as a board is to advise the minister on the change of legislation, to advise her on the regulation change as it pertains to our industry. And we have started with that process. And it will be a process that will be subjected to your inputs and your advice, by and large. We are not going to impose anything as usual. We are going to allow you to dictate to us how the industry should be regulated. But those issues that we were concerned about, things that were making it difficult for us to do business, we have sort of highlighted them, and we hope that there will be more that you will give to us so that we are able to advise the minister. So with those few remarks, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to first and foremost express my appreciation, and on behalf of the board, and I am sure that I can speak on behalf of the industry, to the minister, and say to her, indeed, we are doing things differently. We never thought there will be an opportunity where the minister makes time to come and meet in the entire country with all the practitioners of the real estate industry. So we really appreciate that an opportunity just to speak to you, Minister, to say whatever we want to say with respect, and to also criticize if we want to, the board, to criticize the PPRA. We are very much appreciative of that gesture, Minister. We think that it is very important, and it is a characteristic of a democratic government, and we are proud of you. You emulate a leader in that context. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I will stop right here and allow the chair to come and deal with his business. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing with our program. So the next speaker is going to be talking to us about the new legislation that governs the industry. As you are well aware that we have a new legislation called the Property Practitioners Act number 22 of 2019. This replaced the erstwhile Estate Agency Affairs Act number 112 of 1976. And just for your information, I know you are well aware of this, there's 40 more sections that you need to read, unlike in the previous Estate Agency Affairs Act where we only had 37 sections. And the 40 additional sections in the Act were introduced to cater for the changes in the sector to ensure that the legislation is reflective of what is currently the landscape in the space. Now, before we continue, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our sister entities. I'm not going to mention you by name. You know yourselves, the CEOs from those entities and your delegates. We also want to acknowledge the presence of the voluntary trade organizations, most of whom are represented by the National Property Practitioners Council, NPPC. We also acknowledge that not every property practitioner belongs to these voluntary associations. Those of you that are here in their individual capacity, we acknowledge you. We acknowledge the presence of PPI, the Property Practice Institute, IENSA, SAIPA, and more importantly, our property practitioners. We also would like to acknowledge the presence of Services CETA that is also in the house. Next up, we're going to have Advocate Deborah Val to come and talk to us about the new Property Practitioners Act. And immediately after her, we're going to have some entertainment, because I'm sure after she speaks, it's not going to be your fault if you feel like you are in a law school. It's because she'll be talking about legislative matters. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Advocate Deborah Val. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. All protocols observed. Honourable Minister, Chairperson of the Board, members of the Board, the honoured guests that we have, including the CEOs of our sister organisations and colleagues from those organisations, perhaps the most important of all, property practitioners, our stakeholders, and all our visitors. We welcome you, and it's my great pleasure and honour as one of the junior female choir from the PPRA to be able to speak to you for a little while on an overview of the new Property Practitioners Act. You will know that the property industry in some part has been regulated for many years. And we step back for a moment into history to recall the 1976 apartheid era legislation which regulated estate agents and business brokers, or those who sold business enterprises. You will recall also, let me move my, to the next slide. You will recall also that by regulation, the Minister included in the definition of estate agents those managing agents who managed sectional title schemes, particularly body corporates and share block schemes. This created some difficulty. We were never sure exactly which managing agents fell into that category and which didn't, and it was even more confusing for many of you. Nevertheless, we are so pleased, proud and excited to be part of the rolling in of the Property Practitioners Act, which resolves many of the issues and shortcomings which we found in that old legislation. Of course, included in the Property Practitioners Act particularly, and of great importance, is the question of transformation, which now empowers us as a regulator to be part of an exciting change in the entire landscape of property in our country. I'm going to discuss a couple of the changes in detail in a moment, but just to touch on a few. First of all, we will find in our transformation legislation reference not only, and as has been mentioned, to the Transformation Fund, also reference to a research centre which is created to assist all of us, as well as the passing in the legislation of certain undesirable activities which acted as roadblocks for transformation previously. And we are pleased, as our Honourable Chairman has indicated, to be part of ensuring that those provisions of the Act are enforced and put into place with the help of our sister entities. Also included in our Act is exemptions, something new which we didn't have under the old Act. Section 4 allows for exemptions to be granted as against certain criteria, and in terms of those exemptions, we have the opportunity to allow previously disadvantaged individuals to work while they become compliant. So that is a great step forward. We are very pleased to be able to be involved with that process. We also find that our new Act enhances many of the duties as well as the capabilities of the PPRA. We, in becoming a regulator for so many more industries, now find that we regulate the vast majority of operators within the property practitioner industry. And in doing so, the new Act provides for us to ensure that we are consultative, that we embrace a phase of consultation with the regulators and the property practitioners themselves, so that we can know what you need, we can know how we can work together to achieve the goals of the legislation. Also, we have enhanced processes for such areas as inspections, which you will know we didn't have until the new Act came into being, and we'll touch on that in a moment in a little more detail. Also, we have in new powers as far as dispute resolution is concerned, even between property practitioners, which we did not have previously. This obviously is something that we can use to be of service to all our stakeholders. And of course, for me as the Fidelity Fund Claims Manager at the PPRA, very close to my heart is the protection that is afforded to the Property Practitioners Fidelity Fund, first of all by the capping of claims by value, and secondly by the fact that we pay claims now in terms of the legislation where property practitioners who committed some form of misconduct which led to the loss that is covered by the Fidelity Fund having to have been in possession of a Fidelity Fund certificate which was valid at the time of the offence which is involved. Now, that is, of course, a two-edged sword. Part of our duty, then, is to ensure that we educate consumers, we inform consumers, we empower them so that they know the benefits of having somebody who is well qualified, somebody who has a Fidelity Fund certificate and is compliant in doing their business and advising them so that they are protected at all times. we'll delve a little more deeply into some of the aspects which I have mentioned, and particularly we'll start off with the PPA coming into effect on the 1st of February of 2022. It was in fact signed into law on the 19th of September of 2019, but with the regulations becoming ready on that date, they both became effective on the 1st of February of 2022. And as indicated, we have, as a result, a new regulator. We take over, as the PPRA, the administration of the old Fidelity Fund under the Estate Agents Board, and we are now the Property Practitioners Fidelity Fund, which is an entity which the PPRA administers. A large component of property practitioners is now included within the auspices of the legislation and under the regulation of the PPRA. And in fact, we'll go on to see that there are 12 industries that we now manage. And as we roll out these provisions in the Act relating to all of those industries, we are confident that we will be of great service both to consumers as well as practitioners as we regulate these industries. The regulatory mandate which we have also includes transformation, as we've mentioned before, and one aspect which I'd like to mention in particular, which made many of us very pleased to have worked with the old legislation, is the new legislation relating to discrimination within our industry. And provisions in Section 50 of the Act require that no Fidelity Fund certificate be issued to any property practitioner who wishes to operate, who has previously been found guilty of any form of discrimination. And that is whether it's within their operations as a property practitioner or in any other area of their life. And that is very important to us. We didn't have those powers under the old Act, and we found ourselves very often being faced with a situation where we did not feel that somebody, as a result of certain activities, should be part of us. But we had no legislative backing in order to prevent that. And we are pleased that this is now included in the new legislation. The new regulator's mandate also includes vast inspection powers, which is very important to us. You may recall that the provision under the old EA Act was declared unconstitutional by our courts, and as a result, we have for some years not had inspection powers. The reason for the unconstitutionality was serious, and we are very pleased to advise that the new Act solves that problem. It not only protects all the rights of property practitioners in relation to constitutional matters, but it also allows us inspection powers in order to do what our chair mentioned, which is to aggressively take on those who operate illegally in our field. We also, under the new Act, have various provisions relating to consumer education and protection. And very important here is, first of all, the fact that no commission may now be paid to any property practitioner by a conveyancer or attorney unless that person produces a valid and current Fidelity Fund certificate, which means that it's that much more difficult for those illegal fly-by-night property practitioners who wish to simply abuse and take advantage of our consumers from being able to operate in the industries. We also have disclosure forms which have been put in place in the regulations so that those who buy, sell, those who rent, lease, are in a position to fully disclose the aspects of the property in question to those interested parties. And I mentioned previously exemptions. Apart from the application for exemption, which we are permitted to have, we also have the opportunity to ensure that anybody who wishes to may apply for an exemption from a trust account. Now, you will remember that under the old Act, and in fact under Section 54 of the new Act, all property practitioners are required to have a trust account, I beg your pardon, which is opened within their name and which is designated as a trust account in terms of Section 54(1) of the Act. Now, there is also the provision for those property practitioners who do not handle trust monies to apply for an exemption from that requirement. Now, this is not only important for all property practitioners who have found it expensive to have a trust account which they simply didn't use, but specifically for transformation. We find that new and emerging property practitioners are able to come into the industry without having to bear in mind and make provision for the cost of auditing every single year of their trust account, which is extremely expensive. So that will assist emerging practitioners to come into the industry. And we are very pleased about that. We will move on then to the next slide, which indicates property practitioners which we regulate. And you will see that these are the 12 industries which we now have to take under our wings. We have to ensure that we have education, CPD, and all regulatory needs available for these industries to be served and for them to operate properly. These include attorneys' employees, and attorney employees are those who are employed by attorneys whose work constitutes almost exclusively or materially of property practitioner activities which arise within the scope of the practice of the legal person or the lawyer. Secondly, auctioneers, I think that's self-explanatory. Bond and bridging finance originators, those who are in the industry will be familiar with them. Business brokers are also included. They were also under the old Act. They retained in the new Act. Developers, and I can mention that this relates to developers particularly who sell, market, lease, rent their own properties. Developers who use registered and licensed estate agents or property practitioners to do it on their behalf need not register with us and are not included in the Act. But where they proceed and actually carry out property practitioner activities themselves, they then fall within our regulation. Estate agents, of course, homeowners associations, and you will see it as those who perform property practitioner activities. So not all homeowners associations will be included there, but certainly those who involve themselves for benefit in the sale, management, letting, rental, etc. of properties will find themselves having to be registered and licensed by the PPRA. Managing agents, and interestingly enough, there is a definition of managing agents in the regulations, and the property which they manage has its own expanded definition in the regulations, and it includes any duties, rights, etc. associated with property. So it's quite a wide definition. Payment processing agents, this is a new animal which the Act brings into being. And these are those who register as property practitioners but who provide payment processing platforms for other property practitioners who don't wish to hold a trust account. They may use these practitioners instead. Where they have trust monies coming in, they need to go directly to payment processing agents, and there are a number of requirements which these agents have to comply with in order to safeguard those trust monies. Property advertising platforms are also under our regulation now, as well as property facilitators and intermediaries. And I pause here just before I finish to mention that this is quite difficult for many practitioners. We've had many asking, what does that include? Do I fall into that category? I am a property portfolio manager. Does this include me? And what we've said all along and continue to say is that not much is in a name when it comes to property facilitation and intermediaries. It depends on what you do. And if you perform property practitioner activities as defined in Section 1 of the Act, then you will find that you fall within that category. But we are open and very happy to have any of you approach us to find out and make sure if you have any doubts. And then finally, we have the timeshare and fractional ownership practitioners who are also brought within our realm. This is important because it was a completely unregulated area of the property sector previously. That, ladies and gentlemen, Honourable Minister and all our honoured guests, is a brief overview of the new Act and regulations which we have. We are excited to be doing our part in implementing it, and we are confident that it will be a watershed time in our country's history as we proceed to change the property landscape, both for consumers as well as for practitioners. And we are very honoured to be part of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Advocate Val, for that insightful presentation. And I hope that we now know if you are part of the family of 12 or not under the wing of the PPRA. And hopefully you will also, more importantly, take advantage of the transformative provisions of the new Property Practitioners Act. With that said, we're now going to be entertained. We are going to welcome the choir, and after that, the chair of the board will give us guidance. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you so much to the choir. Let's give them another round of applause. And I think the serenation was actually important for cerebral rejuvenation, because when you are in an environment where we are dealing with legal issues, we need to be contained so that we can keep this as a well-oiled machine, right? So up next is me. Right? So we are going to talk transformation, ladies and gentlemen. And I have 30 minutes, and I'm going to make sure that I stick to the time and make sure that we obviously stick to the program. And we will immediately after that take a break, and after that we'll continue with the program. So jumping straight into the transformation, I just want to pause here and draw your attention to this very first slide that actually has the logo of the PPRA, Human Settlement, and South Africa in the middle. This is symbolic because as the PPRA, working in collaboration with our ministry, we're working so hard to build one nation, and that is South Africa. Now, if we look at the demographics in this country, and this is what I call statistical truth. And this statistical truth is supposed to help us make informed strategic decisions as to what are we going to do moving forward to build the one nation that I spoke about. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is evident from the slide in front of you that black people or black Africans make up 81% of the population makeup in this country. And you can see the split. This is coming from Stats SA, and this is a well-known fact to everyone in this country. Now, if we split this further from a province point of view, we can see that the majority of this
Country sits in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal being the second, and then Western Cape. This slide is very important for us to take note of, because you will see that also in terms of the real estate transactions, this is clearly mapped out in terms of which province has got most real estate transactions and which one is second, third, and obviously all the other remote provinces. So, ladies and gentlemen, in contrast to the statistics that we've looked at just now from a population point of view, we then took a deeper look at our industry, almost 3 decades into democracy. Unfortunately, our industry is the most untransformed sector. So these statistics here are coming from the PPRA annual report, and you will see that white people own the lion's share of the sector. And the balance is all the black people, as the chair indicated to us that when we say black, we are actually referencing the definition as prescribed. This is just to graphically demonstrate how wide the gap it is between the black and the white. From those that are owning the industry, we call them principal property practitioners. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can see that these are the 2021 statistics compared to 2020, and we intentionally drew these stats from the annual report of 2021 compared to 2020, because in 2022, you are well aware that there was a change where we had to switch from being called the Estate Agents Affairs Board to be called the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority, and there were 2 sets of annual reports that needed to be presented. We didn't want to obviously distort the picture, not that anything significant has actually changed, but we just thought that just to make it easy for you to digest how wide the gap it is between blacks and whites in terms of the real estate sector. So we thought we should also include this particular slide here, because not only is the gap wide in the one category, it is actually wide in all the three categories of people joining the sector. And as you know, we call them candidate property practitioners, and those that are in operations, or what we refer to as full status property practitioners, and ultimately the principals. So the gap is wide in all the three categories that we have. Now, we then asked ourselves, what is it that the PPRA, or what I like to call PAPRA, is supposed to actually do from a legislative point of view? So PPRA's legislative mandate, ladies and gentlemen, is in the Act. However, we've defined this legislative pillars just to help us remind ourselves as to what we stand for. And we thought that the abbreviation RPT, for repeat, would actually help everybody to remember exactly why does this entity exist. We are here to regulate, protect the consumer, and more importantly, as you can see, it's in bold and in bigger font, transformation. We need to transform the sector whereby currently just over a quarter of the entire sector comprises of black people. We thought that let's also draw your attention as to where exactly in the Act should you, after this session, go and read to see exactly what we're supposed to be doing to respond to the statistics that I just shared with you. So if you look at Chapter 4, particularly Section 21, we've got 4 programs we're supposed to be running. The first one being principalization. And this is where, ladies and gentlemen, we're intending to get people that are prospecting of becoming principal property practitioners to be assisted in terms of meeting the education and training requirements. Regularization, the chair spoke about people that are doing business in a clandestine way. We welcome those to actually come and join the formal space of doing business. We also are cognizant of the fact that we need to educate the consumer, because you, ladies and gentlemen, are aware that consumers are the ones that are obviously granting mandates out there, so they need to know exactly what is it that we're doing as the PPRA to respond to the transformation challenges. And lastly, we have to undertake a work readiness program. This is where some of you are well aware that we have a program called One Learner, One Property Practitioner Youth Program. I'll speak to that just now. And more importantly, if you also look at Section 20, subsection 3, we are supposed to then, once those people have qualified, we then need to make sure that then how do we help them to scale to become national brands? Because there's no point of getting people to be principals, but then they can't actually run meaningful businesses. Because we've noted with great concern that the question is not whether black people do join the sector, but the problem is, why are they not growing? And that's the question that we really seek to answer. Now, in response to all the challenges that I've just indicated to yourselves, we are running a candidacy program, and this program is in response to the principalization program. There is a service provider appointed called MILZET by Services SETA, because Services SETA is the one that is actually doing the funding of the program. These are the people that are aspiring to be principals, so we're hoping that in the next 6 months, we'll be graduating these people to go and run their own businesses. Because these people are dispersed in the different provinces in the country. We're not only just having physical sessions where we are facilitating this training, we're also getting them to obviously join virtually. Now the question is, what are they saying so far? So this is what they actually said to us, just to keep us obviously going. These are just words of encouragement from some of them. The other program that we're intending to do, as I indicated, that there's no point of getting people qualified, but then you don't obviously help them to grow. We have to actually run an SMME incubation program. This is basically informed by Section 20, subsection 3D of the new Property Practitioners Act. And the thinking here really is to say the PPRA seeks to appoint or select 25 SMMEs to try and empower them, given what they need to actually scale, like I indicated, that we intended to get them to become national brands. So one of the things that we are obviously, thank you. We are cognizant of the fact that you need an office space to actually run your business. You need to obviously advertise your property stock. You need office equipment, marketing using other platforms such as these ones obviously cost money. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we also, as I indicated, we're supposed to be doing consumer awareness. What we are saying here is be on the lookout on our website to see what are the planned consumer awareness activities so that you don't miss out on the conversation between ourselves and the industry at large. Now, the other thing that we also are doing is to basically, as I indicated, to continue running the work readiness program called the One Learner, One Property Practitioner Youth Program. And you can see that these are obviously the young people in the different provinces aged between 18 to 35. And this is one of the principles that is actually helping us to obviously drive the process. These young people are scattered in the whole of South Africa with the exception of Northern Cape. So we are active in 8 provinces, but not in Northern Cape. However, recently we visited them and Rawson put up their hand and they're going to be helping us to then, have presence there. So if you are asking from a statistical point of view, because we understand numbers matter in this industry, we currently have about 358 learners across the 8 provinces, as I indicated. However, we're intending to grow this number subject to availability of resources. Now, ladies and gentlemen, transformation is what everybody talks about. Transformation does not have to be an emotive issue in the context of South Africa, given where we come from. However, I've found that transformation gets to be reduced to a mere conversation, not even informed by any action to move it forward. So we've done a study and we are continuing to obviously take stock of what is happening in the space, and these are some of the things that we've actually sort of unearthed to say what are some of the barriers of entry or transformation initiatives. Lack of funding. Without money, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot do much. We can have all these beautiful programs that we keep talking about, but we need funding to back them all up. The other thing that we spoke about is lack of access to property stock. There's no point in getting qualified if you're not going to have access to stock, because then you're not a sustainable business. The thorny issue that we also picked up is this high marketing costs, because as you know, there are existing property portals where you're supposed to market your stock. Otherwise, then nobody knows about what you are actually selling. We've actually then learned that there are high costs that need to be paid for the stock to be put on those portals. We are definitely doing something about this, and we'll obviously communicate to the sector. We also learned that the terms of reference that are issued by many public entities are not necessarily favorable to small, medium enterprises. Things like mandatory subcontracting by the big companies is not what we see often. Or if they are, they're not clearly defined and at most confusing. There is also a lack of qualified mentors to impart the skills, because mentorship is very important in this industry, and as you have observed until now, it's a highly regulated industry where you need to really know what you're doing. So we found that there are not a lot of people that are qualified willing to take on our learners to train them. Often when we approach established businesses, we get told that we can only take one of your learners, we can't do more than that. And that presents a challenge in terms of us closing the gap that I highlighted at the beginning of the presentation. Now, the other thing that we also observed, because we believe that transformation is a multifaceted conversation. You've got a property practitioner, but you also have members of the public that are supposed to be granting mandates. There's no point in us getting these people to be qualified, but they don't get given mandates by the members of the public. We've sadly observed that the public do not necessarily trust newcomers, and we understand why. Because if you've worked for such a long time to come up with the investment that you've put in your property, you're not going to give it to what sometimes the newbies are called fly-by-nights. So it's very important that we continue to educate, which is why we're going all around the country to conduct consumer awareness roadshows to make sure that then we can actually then confirm to the members of the public that as long as a person is properly qualified, and this is how you check whether a person is qualified, they can certainly then trust that person to then start and conclude a transaction. So ladies and gentlemen, with those words, this is where I would like to leave this conversation, but more importantly, leave you with these wise words that Rome was not built in one day. So finally, Lao then says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. This is one of the many. Chair, take us to the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. I feel like a Caesar now. Ladies and gentlemen, we have decided that we are not going to break for tea simply because we started a bit late. So we can just have the minister and then we can proceed to lunch. So allow me to introduce to you one of the youngest and the most dynamic ministers. You know, Minister, I didn't tell you this, I must tell you in public. There's a guy that requested me to ask you to come and address a forum. And then I indicated to him that you were not available. I said, is there any other that you would like me to invite? He says, no, I want that only dynamic one. So it's nothing, it's not me, it's something that I've learned out there. Let me introduce to you Minister Kubayi. She is no newcomer in the cabinet. She is no newcomer in the government issues. She has been a minister for quite a number of portfolios. She has also acted in some of the portfolios, but we know that she acted as the Minister of Health at some point when we were faced with some serious challenges in the country. And she was also the Minister of Technology, which is the reason why she now is a new convent, and she speaks a lot about technology. Maybe she thought we don't know that. But she has now been our minister for quite some time, and we were appointed by her directly. We were not inherited from the previous minister. So if we do anything wrong, it's all on her. She is the one that must carry that responsibility squarely. But we hope that she is happy with the work that we are doing. Ladies and gentlemen, as we welcome Minister Kubayi, a round of applause.
Thank you very much. I'm going to battle. I need to put my iPad on. Can I remove this one? Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Acknowledgement of the program director who's been running the program. Acknowledgement of the chairperson of the board, Mr. Stephen Ngobeni. Members of the board of PPRA present. The acting CEO, Mrs. Tato Ramaili. Chairperson of the Institute of Estate Agents South Africa, Mr. Ivan Nethley. Property Practice Institute, Mr. Hauda Mahomani, who's the chairperson as well there. chairpersons of NPCC, Ribosa industry bodies, CEOs of entities who are here, real estate company principals, business leaders in the property sector. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon. The meeting we are having today is quite long overdue. And I realized after I've joined the portfolio since 2021, I had not had an all-industry engagement, and that's why I requested the PPRA to facilitate this, because I've been having engagement with one or two individuals and companies directly, but I felt this platform is important. But again, as I was receiving feedback of how they've been coordinating this, both the CEO and the board chairperson raised an issue that there were quite a number of people who wanted to be here and couldn't be here. So I have committed myself beyond today to have more conversation. So I will avail myself. I've committed that to the chairperson and the CEO. They will coordinate. And as they say, we can utilize technology, or as I move into provinces, so that we can focus on the issues at that particular area. Today we thought it's an important platform for us to come and reflect on how the sector can best assist us as a country, both socially and economically. Over a year ago, we launched this board, the PPRA Act, that replaced the Estate Agency Affairs Board. This work has been done by the predecessor and the team that has been here. And the launch of the PPRA marked the coming into operation of the Property Practitioners Act. And the aim of the new act was to strengthen the regulatory aspect of the human settlement sector. And one of the issues that I said to do, we are working in terms of ensuring that we avoid duplications on the portfolio, and we also ensure that there isn't any regulatory constraints that impedes on the growth of the sector. I challenged the leadership of PPRA at the time, as they were getting appointed, that my priority when I came into the sector was to stabilize the portfolio, both in terms of the national department, its entities, but also to ensure that governance is observed. I said to the new board that at the time that I do not compromise on corporate governance. This includes the principles of transparency, accountability, and security. All these principles, but more importantly as well in terms of services, how we provide services in an efficient and effective manner. All these principles needed to be observed so that the entity could function properly with a safe and healthy environment in which the entity is best able to achieve its mandate. I remember at that time I said to the board, the current entity is in ICU and I want it urgently out of ICU. I said this because there were quite a number of issues that we're facing. Each day I would receive either WhatsApp messages, social media platform, because I'm quite active on social media. I would see the complaints that were coming through. Emails were not ending. It was one of the most difficult periods to receive quite a lot of complaints from people that we are meant to serve. And this is the message I had said to the team. The day I would know that you are stabilizing, I'll see with the reduction of the complaints I receive. But what was worrying was that there were basic things that were not in place that many of us would have expected, both yourself and myself as the portfolio head. Things that needed to be done just simply. People writing exams on time and receiving their results. People being able to pay and not having problems. People receiving their FFC certificates without even having to have a hurdle. Those were basic things in terms of our mandate that we were not able to do. And that's what I said to the team. This had to stop. What was also a critical element in turning around the entity was the improvement in the relationship between the entity and the sector, which at the time I felt that EAAB had completely mismanaged. I challenged the leadership to go and interact with the sector and forge a working relationship. The feedback that I'm receiving and that I continue to receive is that there's been a working together with the sector by the PPRA, board and the leadership. Not to say that there are no challenges and there's room for improvement, but the revival of this relationship is something we should nurture and strengthen. I've been getting feedback that the NTC is indeed turning a new leaf, and I believe that we now have a good leadership that stabilized the entity, and they need all our support to continue on this path. Now, the PPRA has three main functions, which are to regulate the affairs of all property practitioners, to allow for transformation in the property sector, and to provide for a consumer protection. The entity cannot achieve these functions by itself. It requires partnership and collaboration with the sector, especially the private sector, to be able to fulfill its mandate. So as we gathered here, we are not only here to discuss the PPRA and how it is carrying out its mandate. Much as that is important, we are here to discuss the property sector, challenges and opportunities, and more importantly, how we can work together to create a growing and inclusive property sector. According to the 2021 Property Sector Charter Council report that they released, the financial, real estate and business services sector accounted for 22% of country's real value added generated by producing goods and services. According to the same study, the SA property market contributes 5.8 trillion. That's significantly contributing to GDP. In 2018, one of South Africa's Reserve Bank report also estimated that South Africa's total fixed capital stock is worth 7.6 trillion. This means that the property market accounts for 76% of SA capital stock outside of machinery and transport. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, with the numbers, this is a very important sector of our economy. The wealth that it generates needs to be shared equitably, and I think working together we can grow this pie and share it. I'm cognizant that the property market is still reeling from the impact of COVID-19. But there are great signs of recovery when we look at the Stats SA report that they quarterly reported on. In the first quarter of this year, the finance and real estate and business services grew by 0.6%, and I think this will improve going forward. There are opportunities in areas such as student accommodation, social housing, and so on. There are several areas that we must look at that are critical for growing and transforming the sector. And this includes the following: capacitation and enterprise support for historically disadvantaged property practitioners, support of existing SMMEs owned by historically disadvantaged property practitioners, promotion of standard of training and development of historically disadvantaged property practitioners. We need to see more young people getting into the sector. Not only getting, but staying. Because we get them and they leave. So sustainability is important. Facilitation of ownership of and participation in the property investment enterprises. Enabling the transformation of property ownership in South Africa by providing grant support through the Transformational Fund to historically disadvantaged property practitioners who are in the business of developing residential properties in the affordable and secondary housing market. How we can work together to accelerate the first home finance program, which is within our portfolio, run on behalf of the department at NHFC, because this is another area of opportunity that exists. And I understand they will be part of the panel this afternoon and working together to see how best we can be able to collaborate. so that all market segments receive the quality of service that the higher segments of the market receive. Now, ladies and gentlemen, over and above this, we must discuss the issue of modernization and digitization. The only way that in this day and age we are going to improve the ease of doing business is through digitization. I said to the board, I say to my portfolio, I just don't understand in this day and age in 2023, where there's available technologies off the shelf that we can utilize, why are we still operating manually? So they have, one of their scorecards is that we've got to move all these things off manual. How we interact, platforms should be able to assist us for doing exams, for payments, for applications, and renewal and applications of our FFC. It's possible, it's doable, and it's something that we are going to do. So I have committed, as the portfolio head, I said to my team in the department, because I want to move the entire human settlement sector, especially in the public space, to a digital platform. I was saying to them this morning, I had a meeting with the Minister of Indonesia. And this is something that I have a gripe on. As they say, I used to serve in the World Economic Forum Artificial Intelligence Committee. As a person who's more exposed to what the digital platforms and technology can do, I envy when I sit and feel ashamed when I sit with my counterparts and they talk about how they have moved a lot of their services online and how it is efficient and how it is transparent, but it gives them value. So I have committed myself that one of the things I'll have to do as my legacy on this portfolio is to be able to deliver a digital platform. And I said to the board, what we want in the next 3 months is for all these things to move to a digital platform. We want to see your applications. The applications must be online. Payments must be online. Exams must be online. Renewals must be online. And new applications must be online. The technology is available to provide for all the securities concerns that anyone can have. I was sharing with them that I don't know when was the last time I walked into a bank. We don't have, many of us have to walk into a bank because we've got everything on our apps. Now, when we look globally in what property sectors are doing, we see this is the trend. It gives value. But it's an efficient way of running business. Now, we have to turn to that. So that's the commitment I made. I said to them, because if I don't do this thing, I'm going to be fired. So I said to them, before I get to Manhlamandlovu, where I'm going to be fired, I would have fired them in the process. So there is literally things that we've got to do different. We are not going to have to tolerate incompetence and inefficiencies. I always say to my portfolio, my middle name is not I'm sorry. Where every time I go somewhere, I must start first by apologizing for the mishaps that are happening. That time has to pass. At least most of the people have gotten that knowledge. I've received good feedback, even including from AG team, because I always pay attention to what happens everywhere in the portfolio, that things are turning the leaf, and I want it sustained. I said to the board chair, we've started well, I want improvement. I want to see an efficient and effective organization, and that's no compromise on it. As he says, that I did not inherit, and if they do anything wrong, I will have to take the fall. So I said to him, there's no taking off the fall. We are going to do it because I do believe that we have the ability, we have the capability, and they've got my support to do it. One of the areas, because we've got to understand, if we are to want to grow the economy, all sectors have to come on board. all of us, as I outlined there, the role of the sector in the economy. So when you see the growth of the economy being at pedestrian level, you must know you are part of that problem as a sector. Because we contribute huge amounts to the GDP. Now, people talk about unemployment in the country. People talk about, we're complaining about inflation. There is absolutely nothing the Reserve Bank can do. We have to grow the economy so that we stabilize inflation. So that these rates don't go up. I know you are affected because you sit with applications, banks are about to approve, and then they reject because the inflation has gone high. That is an end product in terms of the value chain on the economy. Because we can't have a running away inflation. It has to be kept. And the mandate of the Reserve Bank is to do precisely that. But all of us, from a policy point of view, from a regulatory point of view, from practitioners, we have a role to ensure that our sector grows. And we need to get the basics right. Now, starting with our regulator, we have to get the basics right. I said to the board, one of the issues that I'm looking forward to here, as a minister, I'm responsible for legislation and regulation, is to hear feedback if there are concerns around regulations. No one else is going to change them except me. So complaining amongst yourself without making sure that I understand the shortcomings or the gaps that exist in the current regulation will not help you. So I hope we'll get that feedback to say, are the regulations assisting you? That's the first thing. The second area is a plan for this transformation. Are we all on board in terms of what needs to be done and what the institution has to do? I said to the board, the financing part of it comes at the end, after we have a plan. But it has to be a plan that as a sector you buy into it. Because as I said, we can't do this thing alone. It's through partnership with you that will be able to achieve these areas. But tell us, are we making your life easier? Obviously, I know because I've interacted with many of you. I follow you on your social media platforms. Many of you, I listen to what you are saying. The complaints on Facebook about the FFC report, you emailed, somebody didn't answer. That's what we have to fix. And that digital platform, I believe it will kill all those complaints. Now, we've got to be able to move to strategic issues. The issues, I've had conversations with some of the estates to understand why is it prohibitive to people to participate, to sell, because the issue when you put a price, like what Chair was saying, for me to operate in a particular estate, I need 80,000 in terms of being able to put it up front so that I can sell in that estate. It is prohibitive. Already it creates an exclusionary measure, which is not correct. How is a new SMME, entry SMME, going to operate like that? Because in this selling, they still have to have an office, they've got to have staff, they must pay the bills and all those things. And we know the cost of operation has gone up. And that's why it's important for government to solve the electricity and the load shedding so that we don't have high cost in terms of input to our businesses. But those conversations around our property sector, how we ensure that we have an equal footing of play, is important. And the reason why sometimes there's a misunderstanding. In transformation does not mean that you remove a black face, a white face, you replace it with black face. It's not that. That's not what transformation is about. Transformation, it says that we acknowledge that all of us have a role to play. There should never be an area where it's excluded for a particular race while others don't participate. It says all of us, let's have a role. Let's include everyone. We do not want to build a racial representative country, but we want to build a non-racial country. Now, we've got to look at where we've traveled, how far we've been, and where are we? Are we having equal opportunity to succeed in the property space? If not, why are we not having that? And what is it that we've got to do, all of us, to be able to get to that point? Our children should not inherit what we inherited. All of them have to have an equal footing in terms of the playing field being leveled. Now, it's our duty to build the future South Africa we want. No one else is going to do it. We have to do it. But it starts with our own sectors. It starts with our own areas of work. My duty as a minister is to be able to provide policy environment that is conducive and regulatory environment that is conducive. I cannot run your sector, and I have no intentions of doing that. Because I do believe that we have a sector that has been thriving. And where you feel that there are issues of constraining the potential growth of the sector, give us feedback. I can assure you, we'll work towards correcting that. But most importantly, what I can guarantee you is that we have sat down, and they know the board, I do crack the whip, in ensuring that you have a regulatory environment that is good. What we have experienced in the past with our entity, it's something that we are going to put behind us for good. We've heard you. We've listened to your complaint. I said to them, you are paying for this service, and there's nothing less we should be able to give, except for an efficient and effective service. And that's the commitment you have from this minister, that we will do our level best. I will push. They know I do. If I see something, last year when there were complaints, I said to them, hey, I'm happy that there are no complaints. We've run exams, I don't have a complaint. Last year, during the exams, I called an agent meeting with the board. I told them, these complaints I'm seeing, can you sort them out? And I don't want to see them next year. And I'm happy to say, I've not received an email of complaint this year about the exams. I know they were done. I just saw that people have been writing. That's part of the improvement, but we can move the higher level. The expectation is excellence. Because if we can't, as a country, continue to subject ourselves to mediocrity. Not in where I operate, and that's what I pride myself with. Being professional, and I expect everybody in the portfolio to be that. So that you can be rest assured that we will turn the tide. I always say, my runway towards my end of term is short, so this is my legacy, and they're going to deliver, but they have 3 months to deliver to me a digital platform. Not until next year, before the end of this year. And that's what we want. And it's going to be done, I can assure you. So that as we converse, we continue. We can look at different things. We can look at what is it that we need to do. What are the other opportunities? We would want to see ourselves, for example, starting to build green cities. I mean, the world is moving. I had an engagement with the Minister of Egypt when I was in Nairobi. And he was telling me how they have gone to build a new city in the desert. And I said to my team, but what is stopping us as South Africans? We have all these resources. These people have no water, they are in a desert. Yes, we are a water-scarce country, but we can. So part of the challenge is for us to be able to think outside the box, think differently, but build better communities. And it's up to us. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking forward to the conversations today. And I'm not going to be leaving until we finish, because I would like to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are making notes. And I hope that you are going to soon be raising your hand to say, can I have another exam pad? Because you don't have enough space to capture all these insights. Because you know what they say, a short pencil is better than a long memory. So with that said, we're moving on to the next stage of the conversation, where we are actually going to enter into a discussion. The Minister was very clear, Honorable Minister was very clear that she would like to hear from the horse's mouth. So this is that time when our acting CEO, Ms. Ramayedi, is going to assist us in facilitating the conversation. I'll hand over to the acting CEO to facilitate the conversation. Thank you, CEO.
Honorable Minister, the floor is now yours. We do have mics throughout the room, so there will be individuals also helping us so that they are audible, Minister, in asking questions so that we can unpack what we came here to unpack. And then obviously the chair is here as well to assist. But the board is here. Some of the PPRS management is here, so we're going to have a fruitful engagement. Thank you, Minister.
Do you not have mics here?
Okay, I do see a couple of hands that side, so we can start. And then I just ask my team to also just be an extra pair of hands, eyes rather. So I'll start on this side. Thank you.
Minister, I thank you. My name is Ferdi. I'm here in my capacity as the president of the Certified Business Broker Council. I represent business brokers. If you allow me, just three aspects. Firstly, with regards to Section 21 and the Property Sector Transformation Fund, I ask you to kindly consider the unfairness of such that there is only transformation within property ownership and that there is vision for business ownership. The fact of the matter is that one can attain a home loan, even 108% home loan, to buy a property, but you cannot get funding to buy a business. And if one assists people and the business broking industry in acquiring a business, such shareholding ownership of a business then helps that individual to also attain the income, and from that income of a business can then acquire a property again. Where you transform business, you also transform 10 employees instead of just one. So I ask you to consider and make provision for business funding as well. The second point I wish to raise is with regards to Regulation 33, and this is with regards to training and consumer protection. Now, I raise this to the authority itself, and I ask that the PPRA kindly consider to vary the provisions for the training to accommodate the specific requirements for us as business brokers. I've been in consultation and it's been very fruitful with the PPRA, the qualification standards, the course material, the PDE exams, and the standard of practical training. We need to get going with a national certificate business broking, and I'll get to this point again. And my last point, I would rather ask a question to the PPRA. Now, this is regard with mediation. As a business broker, my function is always to negotiate and mediate between buyers and sellers. So I'm a flag bearer of mediation, and I love it that the regulations now provide for mediation where there's a dispute between a member of public and one of the practitioners. And as a business broker practitioner, my question or my concern is the following. If a dispute is declared, is the PPRA actually prepared to resolve disputes just as the GAIB principles being used, or the EBITDA calculations, or the stock take of a business, or how that business was promoted, or the fact that business information is not given to people until they sign an NDA? So I would end off just stating again with RPT. Firstly, we regulate the practitioners. We need qualifications to regulate us as business brokers. And secondly, to protect the consumers, there must be a minimum disclosure when selling a business, and it only provides for minimum disclosures with regards to property. And lastly, with regards to transformation, you cannot transform if there's no money. Please help us with a transformation fund for funding for businesses. I thank you, Minister.
Good morning, Minister. Good afternoon, Minister.
Hello.
And the team. And my name is Unsiki Mkaiya from Tsiki Real Estate. Minister, I just want firstly to commend you, because last year, as few of the women, black women, real estate called upon you, and you honored the meeting with us, which is something that we never gotten from the officials. In that meeting, we spelled out the concerns of the black women in the industry. Then in that meeting, there was also an acting CEO, not you, but before you, ma'am, which we did a follow-up on the meeting that we had with you and them. Up until today, we haven't received a response from the transformation manager who made a commitment to communicate with us until now. Therefore, I'm saying that the transparency you spoke about, the accountability you spoke about, and the efficiency ends and starts with you. Because I don't think there is a commitment within the officials in the PPRA to address issues that we are raising. But I'm happy that some of the stuff that we raised with you, I saw Joe has raised them on his presentation, because in that meeting, we spoke about financing of small businesses. We spoke about the issue of a PPRA creating a conveyor belt, fast-tracking black women in the industry. But when the black women in the industry, and on the other side, being principals, what happens is no support. You become your own principal, your own mentor, you train people, they go, immediately they are trained, they go work for big companies, because in those big companies, they support in everything, except Tina, the only thing we do, just give them the experience and the training, because we are not being funded by the PPRA, at least to have those three key employees, the finance manager, the receptionist, which is key, and also the person who does training. So you are a trainer, you're a finance manager, you are also a receptionist in your own company. What does that make you? It makes you a bit dysfunctional. It makes you dysfunctional. People don't have now. Your mentees don't have much confidence in you, because now you are fumbling, you are everywhere, right? They end up, after 3 months, they go work for a bigger company. They've taken that experience that they've gotten from you. So I'm happy that some of those things are being raised here. And also, what I also would like to say, that today maybe this is the beginning of a better PPRA, because they've got a minister who's committed in supporting. I really like to see the Transformation Fund supporting existing principles. Yes, we have those that are in pipeline that have been shown there, but the existing principles need support. I had, for 6 months, my commission was supporting those interns, was supporting paying for everything. How will I grow to contest with big companies? So transformation, my last one, transformation, that's not a conveyor belt bringing new black principles. You are failing us, you are exposing us. Okuti, yeah, they are laughing at us. You may be a principal, but you don't have the capacity. So we really, that transformation fund, let it give capacity to those black principals, women black principals. The others will talk for themselves. But now I'm talking about women black principals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, thank you so much. I've been having the mic. Can I go on? Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you so much, Chairperson. Thank you, CEO. My name is Tebo Hostatu. I'm from the United Civil Society in Action. Thank you, Minister. I also want to acknowledge.
They mustn't give people mic.
Hello. I want to acknowledge your response to a written response. Thank you so much for having responded to pitch the Property Industry Transformation Council. I work with them, so I read your response, and I think it puts to rest those issues that PPRA for the first time found themselves being taken over by some of us activists in a fight, but we got to understand both sides of the story, and we are putting that to rest. So I want to put that on record to say we are going forward now. But let me raise a few things, especially the backdrop of the lady, the last speaker who's just spoken. Let's not talk transformation as a fashion, as a fashionable thing. And like she said, a conveyor belt. The next minister will be talking transformation. The previous minister was talking transformation, and the next and the next and the next. So up until we lose power. So we can't afford that. So it's like, what do you do when you've got young people outside the system, and you've got those who are not incarcerated in the correctional facility, but you've got those that are already in the correctional facility? What are you going to prioritize in the line of priority of your programs? Are you going to spend more money on those who are already in conflict with the law, or are you going to rather spend more time and resources with those young people to prevent them from moving from being in a free society and going into a correctional facility? So I think it goes without saying, you need to empower those that are already there, that are already doing something. Yes, thank you, you can clap. So don't overload the system. It makes no sense to want to empower those who are already in conflict with the law. We're not saying exclude them, but it makes better sense to empower those to prevent them from falling into the same trap. So I'm using that analogy for a specific reason. And I was looking at the presentation. Thank you for the presentations, by the way. However, I feel like PPRA is already giving up before even they start the fight of transformation. Why do I say that? I saw, in terms of the One Learner One program, we've got Rossins. Rossins, they're the big guys. Maybe not as big as others, but they're the big guys. And you've got that previous speaker who is actually doing the same thing, and I may not know the detail and the processes. However, I want to put it out there. Chair, protect me so that I can also express. English is my 10th language, so I need to express myself. Even if we are so to get it.
Yeah, it's okay. I think we can put down our hands.
Yeah.
Allow him to speak and finish. We will take another round.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Let's allow him to speak.
Thank you. Viva Chair. Thank you so much.
Please, let's put down our hands, allow him to speak. We will take another round.
Unless it was so to interpret. So I was saying, Rossins, we're not saying Rossins should be or should have been excluded in the process of this program. But I'm asking myself a question. I know a lot of black practitioners that have been doing this out of their own pockets. What was the process that was followed to say Rossins are the ones? So for me, PPRA did not put this out enough so that others can get an equal opportunity, and we look at, like you said, you correctly said, Minister, we're not asking for racism or reverse racism here. We cannot exclude others. We cannot do something and to the exclusion of others. And and perhaps the answer you may not know. The guys who are running PPRA on a daily basis must tell us what process was followed to have Rosins there as the main guys doing this program when you've got black women and men who are already doing this. So why don't they share this pie? That's first point. Second point, PPRA is not transforming itself, Minister. Thank you, CEO. You've just introduced us to the new guys, the CFO and the CIO. But I feel like there must be. I mean, we're not excluding white people. And every time you raise a transformation matter, you are labeled racist. But I'm not going to be scared of people who label me. I'm saying there must be a black woman CFO out there. So I'm challenging you to say, let's not, and the reason I'm mentioning these things that are difficult to talk about, that people are scared to talk about, is for people to actually introspect, to say, are we doing enough to talk transformation? And I'm not saying exclude white people. Please don't get me wrong. I'm saying when we transform, we also look at the process of redress. It's as simple as that. And it puts me to another point. I'll try and summarize. I've got many points, and I know, Minister, so we won't finish them today. But the issue of BEE, or triple BEE, we've had instances of practitioners wanting to bid for government work. And you find a government official saying that, no, don't worry about your BEE credentials. They don't matter here. In terms of finding space for big companies, in terms of the commercial property leasing. So we cannot transform like that when we are apologetic about transformation. So the other stuff I will reserve. But in conclusion, Minister, whilst you want to digitize, it's a good thing. We are moving. However, let's come up with processes that will assist those rural young people who may be closed out of the sector because of we've decided to digitize, because of we are only thinking about those people that are in the cities and then not offering alternatives. We must digitize, but we must also offer alternatives for people to enter, particularly young black people in the space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues. I just have an announcement to make quickly. I know we've got burning questions that we all want to address, but if you can just maybe limit your questions to one or two to give other people in the room an opportunity to also express their views. I think we can have, let the minister address some of the questions that were posed. And for those that she doesn't answer, myself, my management team can answer them, and then we can take the next set of questions. Thank you.
Here's a quick one here, because I've been noted already before the minister speaks. Then she can answer. I'm going to be quick. I know we are eager to speak, all of us here. There are numbers here. So but I'm going to be quick.
Please,
2 minutes.
Please, just for a few minutes, wait for your turn. We will allow you first when we come to the next.
Okay, agreed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let me start to respond. I think they want me to respond now on the issues that have been raised. Indeed, there are operational matters that I would not be able to respond to. The team will respond to those operational matters. Let me start with Tebogo and starting with the issue of the CFO. If you look at representation as well, you would find that the COO is a black male. That's why I said to the chair, because you've got a black male as a CFOO, a white male for CFO, we will have to have a discussion about a woman in your executive. So as I said, transformation is not replacement. So it doesn't mean that there is no role for a white person to play in the administration. I hope we understand each other. Demographics in terms of employment equity, it says that you'll have black people, you'd have white people, you'd have colored people, you'd have Indian, represent everybody. So unless if you're saying to me there's over-representation in terms of equity within PPRA, which I don't think so, when I look at the demographics of PPRA. I thought, let me clear that out. Because demographics in terms of employment equity are quite important. We look at the entire organization, who is where, and most of the time, sometimes we find underrepresentation and overrepresentation of other racial groups. So I don't think the point, it's not wrong for PPRA to employ a white male for CFO. I think we must be clear there. Now, the issue of digitization and exclusion of rural areas. As said that I am a former minister, actually I've been in 5 portfolios. This is my 5th. And one of the portfolios I've been was communication. But I've been a chair in Parliament of Telecommunication and Postal Services for about 5 years as a member of Parliament. Now, access to broadband is what we talk about. So when we talk about digitization, let's take an example during COVID-19. Majority of us moved to online, including teaching and learning. We moved to online and we fast-tracked. And when you look at the policy of government and the work that is being done, firstly in releasing of spectrum to be able to ensure that the mobile network operators are able to go into areas where it was previously disadvantaged. But go look in terms of universal access within the mobile network industry or the telecom space, you'd understand that the work that we are doing is to provide for expansion of digital access even in the remote areas. But let's talk in terms of property market, where we are selling and where do we exist? Because there is hypothesis and there's reality. Do we have real estate selling properties in Mkhanya, not even, you're using Tsingitsi. So there are areas, let's go to UNESCO, to KwaZulu-Natal, Ngasemsing. There it's me, Minister of Human Settlement, that is building. There's no properties that are being sold. Actually, we are trying to remove mud houses. So there's no estate agent that is going to operate there. That's the reality. So when we argue and present options, colleagues, let's not be prohibitive of the growth of the sector. We are dealing with the now. Where are real estate operating? If you go to, I made an example of that area, that district, I was there last week. Maybe I can make an example of it because I was there last week. To Utugela, where the president had in Imbizo. That area, even if you can set up your business, you are not going to sell a house currently. You will have to move to Newcastle to operate. Is there network operation access to broadband in Newcastle? Yes, there is. And that's what I'm saying. It's not prohibitive. It's not leaving out rural areas. While we are, as government, working on expansion of rural development and local rural economy, what we need now, yes, it's what we have to do. But those areas as well, it's not that they do not have access to network. That's why I'm explaining from a mobile network operation strategy or access to broadband strategy, where we talk about access to broadband and ensuring that we close the digital divide. There is a strategy from government from that point of view. So as we put our strategy of growth in our own sector, the other sectors are dealing with that. So I thought, let me just deal with that in terms of exposure and what government is doing already. Now, I would want to understand, because I couldn't understand very well around the issue that we have given up before we start. I thought the issues, as Usisi was saying, the issues that consistently that have been raised with us, we are starting to address them in terms of our, and as I said earlier on, it's not yet a perfect picture. And that's why we are here, to get feedback from you, that this is the plan. Show us where the gaps are so that we close them. I have a duty as a minister to ensure that we support the transformational fund, and we will work around that so that we can be able to do that, options that we have to do. But is the plan making sense? That's what we are asking. And that's the feedback. And perhaps that's what is important, what Sisintsiki is saying. I did meet them. They were laughing. This is how I got to meet them. Somebody called me selling a house, and because I used to own a house in Midrand, so they wanted to know whether I'm selling or I'm putting it in the market. So I decided it was one of the intents. So I decided to engage the person to say, tell me, what is your feedback? Do you think we are helping? What is the PPRA? The person decided, no, I can't be talking to you. I must give you the phone to the principal. So that's how we eventually got to meet with them. So I explained myself, because initially she started explaining, and then she asked, who are you? I said, by the way, I'm the Minister of Human Settlements. I think she nearly collapsed. That's why she gave the phone over. And then I ended up speaking with her principal. I said, let me talk to your principal. And I asked feedback. How is the sector doing? What do you think we should do better? And eventually we agreed to meet, the four of us. There were four of them. With me, we had an afternoon session, lunch. I got to have feedback, so that's how I did. I operate differently. I'm not conventional. I hate routine. So I'm unconventional in my doing of things. So Chairperson Ngubeni knows, sometimes when he sees my WhatsApp, I think he thinks, oh, what is the complaint about now? So I get to meet people. As I go, wherever I am, I meet somebody, I ask questions. And that's why in my portfolio, my team gets a headache to say, Minister, we can't cope with what you have. But somehow, many people have my cell phone number. So they send WhatsApp, and then the complaints I forward to them and ask for feedback. Now, the issue, what I'm trying to say here, is that this is what we are building for you. We might sit the other side, I think, that have addressed the issues that you are raising in terms of transformation. We need feedback to say, are we on the right track? Like you are saying, I think both Sisintsiki and Feni from the business brokers, to say this is where the gaps are. And that's the intention here. Where we can go and look, for example, you raise the issues of regulations that we need to pay attention to. The Section 21 in terms of transformation that is closed out, the ownership in terms of support that we have to pay attention to. We'll have to navigate because we can't change the act now. We've got to navigate around the issues on the regulation. That's what we can do, Chair. Navigate around that. And also I think you'll deal with the issues around mediation. But CISOs is one of the areas that we are improving in terms of mediation. Perhaps we can take the lessons from there in terms of how they do mediation and how we are looking at the issues. Perhaps even the expansion would be one of the important things that we look at. I agree in terms of minimum qualifications that needs to be for brokering, but also support. As I said, colleagues, the fiscals is not broad. So there's limitation of what we can get out of the pie of government. How we need to do things is efficiently from our side. And as we give feedback, I'll have to look into my portfolio because National Treasury is just going to tell me there's no new money and there's no additional money. We'll have to look in terms of our portfolio. There are options that we're looking at, whether we can expand to be able to cover more areas. But it's based as well on the practicality. So what we need to do is to do phased-in approach of implementation. We start somewhere, we start implementing, and we grow with the lessons that we've got. Remember, this is a new way that we have decided. We took the approach as government to say we are going to do a transformational fund as part of the implementation of the new act of PPRA. Now, with that, there are lessons that we've got to be able to learn. As we are saying, consultation, this part of the process, in learning where the gaps exist, that we can be able to close them. The fund is meant to grow over time, but it has to start somewhere. And what I'm getting as a feedback around sustainability of the current ones and being able to bring in. But remember, as government, we've got to operate within the prescripts of the Constitution. The Constitution says that we've got to be fair and distribute our resources equitably. The minute I start to say that I will exclude so and so, might be challenged in court, and we might not win it in court. What we could do perhaps is to allocate a percentage chairperson, a higher percentage for those who are existing, but a lower percentage for those who are coming. But complete shutdown of new entrants would not be constitutional. So you've got to understand that. What we do, we must be able to provide rationale as government, but it must be within the confines of the Constitution. So I thought, let me just clear those ones, that we understand that there is areas where we are constrained by law and the Constitution, and we've got to be consistently be applying the Constitution and the law. Maybe answer the issues around chair and thing. I think the issue around staff where you have people not being supported, how we could, there are various options that we could look into. And partnership, for example, with the CTAs in terms of financing support, we should be able to, oh yeah, the issue of financing. Colleagues, financing of SMMEs in the country is quite broad. We will support, but there are other institutions that provide for financial support that we've got to be able to bring in and partner. My experience when I was leading tourism, as I say, I've been in various portfolios, is that partnership, for example, when we were there, I initiated quite a number of initiatives for supporting SMMEs, partnership with NEF, partnership with CIFA. So there are quite a number of areas and institution chair that I would encourage for the board to explore the partnership, to leverage on the financing. That would be something that we could be able to do and look into that. I know, acting CEO, you've been engaging as well to say real estate should be given opportunity to sell what government has as part of the opportunities. That's one of the things she gave feedback. I said, you've got my support. Where is government buildings? Where is government-owned properties, for example, where we support, because we support social housing. We are expanding that. We've got what we call CCG, capital funding of property development and property market. And she's been pushing in the portfolio to say, we've got to be able to ensure that we utilize that as one of the areas of pushing for transformation. And I said, you've got my support for that. So there is quite a lot of things that is being done, innovative ways to ensure that there is support for market access and for finance, because it's not only financing. It's financing and market access. So you can have financing, but if you are not having any houses to sell, then you're going to die. But also around skills development. There are quite a lot of facilities. I've got even today, this morning, I received some of the information about skills development. We are initiating quite a lot of ones. We will partner, we'll bring skills development fund to support around training and development and funding of those, so that we remove the burden and we remove the, cost implications that go with, you could be host employers where you are paid administrative fees for hosting. It's something that is available in government. I think we'll work with the team to support you on that. There is those availability. I think because PPRE, as I said, it was, the institution was in ICU. We battled just with the basics, and that's why some of these innovative things and what is available, even within government, was not explored because we did not have even capacity to be able to drive this. So with the appointment of the executive that currently is there, I do expect that we'll be able to drive more work in terms of exposure. Those are some of the things. I mean, as it is now, I'm looking for 10 per province, SMMEs, who can host young graduates, and they will be funded by Skills Development Fund. So we drive those things, both in my capacity. I have too many capacities, both in my capacity as Minister of Human Settlement, but other things I drive in my capacity as economic chair in government. Maybe let me hand over to you, Chair, if you've got, or CEO, I don't know who goes in, but I think I've covered broadly the issues. The up direct issues.
Thank you, Minister. I'll start with Menziki. One of the questions that the concerns you raise is that as a black principal, you don't have support in terms of funding. And the Transformation Fund manager is here. I was hoping that he would take this one. But the terms of, I know late last year, there was a bid around SMME, right, that was published. But then we since had to withdraw it, because what we failed to do is consult with the industry. So you as a black principal, you know what your needs are, right? And that's a step that we had omitted. So the Transformation Fund manager has since gone back to the industry and consulted with various of you, I know some of you are in the room, to say, what are your needs? So today we know that a receptionist is also your need, training is your need. So I'm glad that we actually didn't publish those TORs around the SMME, but it will be done in the next few days so that we say, and we're starting with 12. So our target for the year was 25, but we've had obviously financial constraints. So we said, let's do 12, because at the end of the day, I still have to, myself and the chair have to report to the minister and say, these are the targets that you've included in your APPs. You've been performing 0. So now we can go back and say, no, we've since published and we are awarding 12. And I'll make sure that reception is included, because I know Joseph had high level touched on some of the funding we would be giving principals to support you. And then the other question I think on that side was around why did we pick Rawson? So say, and I know that you've been following the candidate, One Learner, One program throughout, its tenure. And we've had host employers in 8 provinces. The one province where we didn't have any host employers was in the Northern Cape, and Rawson was one of the real estate companies. They put their hand up. Like Joseph had alluded in his presentation, that we go to some of these big companies to say, please host 10, 12, and almost all of them say, no, I can only take 2. So what we then do, because they are practitioners throughout the country, so just to give you high level, it was not oversight, but it's just a company that did put their hand up. And then there was a question around brokers around the finalization of educational standards. I know that in the last 3 months, my team, the Education and Training and Professionalization team, have held various consultations with all the new subsectors, and I believe we're at the tail end of that, and I know that it's long overdue, but we are finally addressing it. So hopefully in the second quarter still, those will be distributed so that we can just have your final input, so that we can run in that regard, so that we really are intentional about just giving our legislation feet and not it remain just a piece of paper. Thank you. I think, Chair, through you, if we can just take another round of questions. We can start.
Let's start with the gentleman that I suppressed earlier on. Give him the mic. But please remember, colleagues, few questions, no preambles, so that we can be able to give others an opportunity to also ask their questions. So you will be the first, and in that sequence.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister and the CEO, for the opportunity. I think my question is going to be short, and it's on enforcement, because in the previous conversation with you, Mr. Ngobeni, you promised that you were going to knock at the door of these people so that they can comply. And I'm quite happy that as property practitioners, all of us have complied. The property developers. You know, the small property developers, they are complying because they are using the estate agencies with property practitioners that are registered with you. But we've got this big elephant in the game, which are the big developers. I don't know whether the PPRA can't touch them or what. We can call them by names. You said the last time we should inform you and you will knock at their door. Your Calgro M3, your MDev, your Baldwin, your Cosmopolitan, Central Development, all those big companies, they are using people that are not even, I don't know what do they call them, but they are not compliant when it comes to being to getting the FFCs. So I'm still asking you again, our chairperson, that as the board and your inspectorate department, you should start knocking on the door. We want to hear from you. How are you going to do it? When are you going to start doing that so that these big companies are regulated and they should stop using those people that they call a sales consultant? Because there's a big chunk there that we want to also get into. There are a lot of properties to be sold in those developments. So please, start enforcing and tell us when are you going to start auditing also their staff. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, our chairperson. Sipho Mpofu, in front of you, property practitioner of newly built firm. And I've got a greatest mentor behind me. I've got some few questions. The CETA, that's number one. Why does the PPRA or the government use CETA to choose people that are not property practitioners to do vigilating when the people are studying? They just choose. I've studied from them outside, and people that they were there assisting us about the things of PPRA, they don't know nothing about it. Why can't we be used as property practitioners per province? Choose from us, because we know, we wrote about these things, so we can be part of getting those funds. There's another way of assisting us. Secondly, on a trust account, why always we get this message saying, no, you can, I'll take it to our advocate, where you said, Deborah Val, where you said, no guys, upcoming guys, you can bypass the part of trust account. Why? Why? When you say to me, I must grow, I must have each and everything that does with the property. Why are we not, as property practitioners, young ones coming, we are not allowed to use our trust account? Because we are equal to conveyancers. Really, we are not lower than them. Why can our client trust conveyancers with their money, but I'm the one who brought them in? Now I'm not trusted because it's a finance part. So I think the board needs to be out there and teach our people out there, says, guys, you can use, as long as they're legit, legally, following the law, use them. Because we also want to grow. Why must I close that? Yes, some don't want to close it, but I don't want to close it. I want to grow and know how does it work. The trust account. Or to the part, Minister, to the part of the banks. I think this goes direct to Minister. Minister, the banks in South Africa, they are giving so-called big firms the business. And you know it day in, day out. But the government is overlooking that. When houses are about to go to auction, not 2 months, not 3 days, not a week, 6 months down the line, there are so-called big firms that are giving an opportunity to sell those properties. We can't get an access. We need to give someone something for them to give us. Let it be published, and so that we can have an access, all of us, to sell them in time. You can't give me in 3 weeks' time and says, here's a house going to the auction. then I must thrive there as a small guy trying to make ends meet. The last one, Mr. Minister, direct to you. Yes. No, I'm saying this because...
No, let's correct it. You are used to males leading political offices. I'm a woman.
Mrs. Minister, sorry, madam. No, thank you about that.
You should have followed suit.
I should have followed suit, I'm telling you. I'd like to say, on my point of us being out there to come and learn, we talk about the agencies. I want names because we are not here to name and shame people. We are here to help each other. The so-called big names, they have created a system. I don't know if it's a system or it's regulated or not, where they sell, they said they sell under certain name. I don't know how do they call this, but it's a certain name that they use. Yeah, RMS, yes. You can't use. If you go to that property, someone says, no, these houses are sold under this umbrella. I found out, I read, there's nowhere in the regulation that there's a certain umbrella that estate agents, they can sell. So kindly, please, those are the things, sorry, madam. Kindly things, those are the things that are touchy. To some people who's employed, they're not like us, property practitioners. We need to have an access, and those big firms, the board need to approach them and say to them, guys, this is not the way to run the race. Let everybody be equal. I thank you.
Thank you. Can we take the mic to the guy in the front? No, it's coming. It's coming.
Thanks a lot, Chair. Chair, my name is Mutibang. I run a small firm in the North, Midrand and Centurion. Mine is around the question of transformation. I had an opportunity to have both sides in private sector and in public sector. I worked at then Department of Roads, Transports, which then later became Infrastructure Development. Basically, my portfolio was acquisition and disposal on behalf of the government properties, because you know the history quite well that because of disparities of historically disadvantaged, some of us who are practitioners were to say we have government, like public works, as a custodian of government properties at national level, at provincial level. If one department then sought, if it's seeking for either rentals or sales, why can't we have a PPRA from a transformative point of view, working together, the small firms and those that we have achieved in line with the thing, with the department, because the transformation cannot necessarily come up from a private sector. It's incumbent upon the government to be proactive in that approach. That's a question that I want to pose to you, particularly to you, Chairperson. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Can we go this side? Let me see the hands. Okay, that lady.
Good afternoon, Chair.
And if your questions were asked, don't be too embarrassed to retract. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Minister and Acting CEO. It's lovely to hear from all of you today, and thank you for hosting this engagement. Vuiswa Ramokuba from the National Property Practitioners Council. I don't want to reiterate, I think many of the questions have been posed, and I think maybe to start on a high note, let me start on a high note and just commend the team at PPRA under your leadership, Acting CEO, for the efforts that you've made in the short time that you have been at the helm. There certainly has been a gust of new wind at the PPRA, and the industry is deeply appreciative of the spirit in which you are engaging with the industry and the efforts that you are putting towards trying to stabilize the regulator. Now the less fun part. I think one of the biggest concerns, and it speaks to some of the issues that have been raised today, is around the speed of execution and implementation at the PPRA. We have spoken about the Transformation Fund, not just today, but easily for the last 3 to 5 years. From the formation of from the initial negotiations around the Act, right up until the implementation of the Transformation Fund, when the Act came into effect in February of 2022. As it stands today, being July of 2023, we are still in the phase of wanting to understand what the industry wants. Nothing yet has been implemented, despite the fact that the regulations calls for the Transformation Fund to be implemented within 6 months of coming into effect of the Act. So we are deeply concerned at the urgency with which this transformation is being treated, and the fact that it's not clear still at this stage what particular programs are being proposed and what are the measurable outcomes that the PPRA is holding itself to in the delivery of transformation. We cannot keep just talking about this conceptually. We want to see plans, and we want to see measurables and understand what exact outcomes are we working towards. There's lots of money being spent, or there could be lots of money that is spent, but it would be very sad if we stand here 5 years from now looking at the same graphs that Joseph put up and not seeing any progress because we were not able to provide detail of how that change would happen. So we request, please, with relative urgency, feedback from the PPRA about what is happening with the Transformation Fund, what programs are being funded, and what are the timelines around the implementation of these programs. That's number one. On the question of, I know Ferdi, I don't want to respond on your behalf, but I am aware that the fund also not just funds property ownership, but it funds enterprise development and capacitation. And we'd like to appeal to the PPRA to not simply look at sort of brokers and real estate practitioners, but look at the whole value chain. We have to, if we want to transform the industry, look at all aspects of the industry. There's a need, for example, to transform many different aspects of the industry. Some are within your domain, others may not be, but you still have the ability to engage with other industries and look at that value chain and understand where the blockages are. For example, the mortgage origination industry is one that works very closely with the real estate sector. What does the transformation look like there? And are we on top of that, and are we feeding into that? Somebody mentioned the banks. Valuers, for example, work very closely with the industry. If we don't understand the value chains and we don't address the transformation issue at a value chain level, we are not going to succeed. And that takes us to the question of sustainability. We cannot keep pipelining people into an industry if we haven't yet solved for those who are in the industry. I know it's been said, but I really want to reiterate. Surely we should focus on figuring out what is stopping the progress of those in the industry before we want to bring 10,000, however many more unfortunate young people who are going to come and get stuck in our industry and face the very same challenges that those in the industry are facing. Please, can we prioritize a proper diagnostic analysis of what is happening in our industry and what the actual scale of the barriers to transformation are. And then lastly, I just want to say, again, commending you for the progress that's been made, but I want to just reiterate that the stability and the leadership at the PPRA sets the tone for the whole industry. We cannot require the highest levels of professionalization from industry practitioners and make the industry jump through every level of hoop for professionalization, and yet the regulator then does not conduct itself with the same highest levels of professional standards. So I would like to appeal to not just the senior executives, but also every person who works at the regulator to hold yourself to the same high standards that you hold the industry to, because it starts at the top and the leadership takes a cue from everyone at the top. Lastly, I won't hog the mic, I'd like to also appeal, and I did mention it, for integration with other government departments. Department of Public Works, and various other departments who operate in our ecosystem. We need to, the likes of CSOS and other such entities, we need to have clear channels of communication with them and be able to hold them accountable to our transformation objectives, because we are not just running this race alone. There are other people in our industry that have to be alive to what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I see the hands again? Not just before. Can I see the hands again? Please, can we give this the wise men here?
Sorry, Chair, can I just...
No, you will be noted. Allow me to conduct the meeting. Please give him the mic. I will appeal once again. Let's keep our questions short.
Hi.
Avoid preambles. There's a lot of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I believe God sent you to us.
That's why I said you're the wise
I've
man.
been in this... I've been in this industry since 1994. I'm a young lion. And there's many others here who are in a similar situation as I. In 1994, when we entered this arena as a state agents, we had the same talk, and everything that was discussed today was discussed in 1994. The challenge that we have is that we only talk about the problems. Today, Minister, if you could leave here today selecting a committee, a transformation committee, in the hands of these young lions, we will get a lot done. I also need to tell you that the entities, organizations, and the companies that established our previously advantaged brothers to the state where they are right now, as the masters of real estate, does not exist anymore. Those platforms have disappeared. They've gone, like how that lady has discussed, they've gone into Uber, they've gone into all the other companies. When our forefathers were trying to get into the industry, those companies assisted the previously advantaged companies to actually put us backwards. Where we are today is in a very sad place. Minister, we feel like we are the stepchildren. We're being treated like the stepchildren. I'm hearing people here that have the ability but do not have the capacity to go forward because we're on our own. And if we don't speak to the minister today, in the next 10 years, my son is here, he's 18 years old, you will sit with him and talk to the new minister. If we don't establish a committee today transforming the industry, even if it's a temporary one. I come from KZN. I've been involved in transformation with the board. I went to a company called Hewlett's, the sugar plantation people. I took a committee from the board. The gentleman has passed away, but he came there drunk from the board with all wrong figures. We went to go ask them for money for the One Learnership, the One Learner program. It was a total disgrace. There are so many institutions that benefited from apartheid, and sorry I'm bringing this 30 years later, that have to pay for the sins because of where we are today, that we don't have to look for money. We don't have to go and increase the Fidelity Fund certificate costs here for these brothers and sisters to transform the industry. We must go back to the people that benefited from apartheid, including the banks, and they need to give us the money to go forward. In KZN, I represent an organization called JASMAX. We're an estate agency. We've got 18 branches established. We don't want, how could the PPRA ask us to go to be mentored by individuals or companies that we want to take over? We don't want to be part of Rawson. Excuse me when I say this because it might be a good company, but I don't want to be part of Wakefield's. I don't want to be part of Remax. I want a South African real estate company, mostly black-owned, and when we are where we are, nobody must say, ha, I gave you the money to do that. I want to do it on our own strength. We've got the best minister ever. She is... If we do not get this done, we should not leave today if there's not a committee there. I'm not old. This is the outcome. This is the outcome. And guys, it's not a joke, it's serious. This is the outcome of trying to do it yourself. I'm telling you, I'm not old. You do this thing yourself, you're going to end up worse than me. We have a minister here who will appoint a board today, a committee today to take us forward. I travel from KZN.
I have a board already. I can't appoint it. It will be legal. I can't appoint another board.
Well, no, not to do the PP. In fact, you need to get the PPRA to do their job, regulation. You cannot leave transformation to the PPRA, and I love that brother, and I love my sister. But they overworked. We need a transform. In fact, until such time, Minister, that we get a Minister of Transformation appointed by Uncle Cyril, you should do that. Appoint us now. I'm prepared to be the father because I think I'm the oldest here. I don't know whether he called me a disciple or whatever it was, but I'd love to be part of this. I was part of it. We did a mess up with it. And you know what? It's constructive criticism, Minister. This was done before. I don't know whether they give you guys a big budget to host us, but really it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So I'm just waiting. If everybody stopped talking and we got a committee there, not a committee to replace the PPRA, a committee for us to go forward. If there's one sister here that wants to open a real estate firm, don't talk to the PPRA. They're very busy. Talk to me. I've got 30 years of experience. I can tell you how it's going to work. I can even tell you where you're going to get your money from to pay for the best secretary. You understand? So let's get this done.
Thank you very much. Can we look at the hands again? Which one? Yeah, in the middle. I'm taking the last one from the middle. I'm taking the last one from the middle. Then I will go that side again. I'm taking the last one from the middle. Yeah, I put it down and raise it for 1 minute.
Good afternoon, Minister and everybody. I just love the conversation of that other young lady on the far side of the wall there. Oh, I'll join your team any day. Anyway, so I think we're on the same page. And the reality is that I'm saying to everybody here now that there are more black agents out there than there are white agents. It's just that we're all driven underground. And I look at myself perhaps as a black agent or whatever, because the smaller guys are the ones that are getting hammered, left, right, and center. I don't see anybody here from the Big Five or whatever one they call themselves putting their hands up and saying, oh, shame, and what are you doing to the agents? They're relishing in all this over-regulation. And it's literally driving people underground. Now, one of the other big issues that we face, especially in the south of Joburg and I'm sure in other places, is that the illegal foreign nationals are running amok as estate agencies. And I brought this up and up and up again with the board, and they do zip, because they'd rather go for us South Africans because we're easy targets. Okay, so like that lady saying, you guys need to get your act together, get them sorted out, then you can come for us. That's my point. Another big factor is you're talking about transformation. And I ask myself, why do we always have these magnificent venues in Sandton, and why not in Soweto? Or on the East Rand? Or in Pretoria? Why not? Why must we all always travel to Sandton? Another point is, Minister, I don't know if perhaps you can talk to your compatriot in the legal side of things. There's a vast amount of small attorney firms that are stealing from clients left, right, and center. And it is a massive, massive thing out there. I was at the Legal Practice Council the other day because my clients lost 2 million rand with an attorney. And she said to me, it is rife. And I cannot understand why these lawyers keep on doing it, because they never go to jail. That's my point, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That gentleman there, yes.
Sure, thank you so much. I think the tensions in the room, they explain that we truly appreciate this opportunity. I myself drove this morning from Bloemfontein. My name is Mbulelo James, and I observe all the protocol. I think the objective is very clear: policy documents and strategy. Mine, I want to propose to the Honorable Minister that perhaps decentralization would work. CSOS already is doing it. They are setting up an office in Bloemfontein so that certain functions, they can be handled at the provincial level. And then the second one, in terms of unregistered agents, I think in the past there was a collaboration with attorneys to ask for FFCs. Can't we extend the invitation also to the banks and also to NSFAS, especially when it comes to student accommodation, so that they would require FFCs before they could do business with them? And then I think the other issues that are a bit sensitive, I would find a way to talk to the minister regarding the Free State. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience waiting for your opportunity. Can I just ask us not to overcrowd the minister with the questions for now? Let's allow her to respond, and then we will take the last round. And I want to appeal again, if your question has been answered or has been raised, rather, it's okay not to proceed and raise it. I can tell you there's been one question that has been repeated, for example, on transformation, that we have been talking about transformation since 1994. It has been a common theme right through. I'm not saying it's not important. It's very important. But just to manage time, can we recognize that a matter or a question has been raised? And then we can go on to the other issues. And Minister, you are under no obligation to respond to all the questions. Yeah. Which one was that? Eh? Oh, yes. Yeah. So we will also take these questions and answer. No, of course, we're taking that thing serious. I think I spoke briefly about it earlier on when I was addressing that we have already started doing work, particularly with HOAs and the body corporates, insofar as them complying and so on. But there's also an issue that I might have not dealt with, which is onboarding of the property developers, such as your Baldwin and so on and so forth. The delay that we have is general, and indeed the intention is to bring them on board so that all of them can comply and be required to have FFCs, and they can start making rentals available and sales available on the basis of the FFCs. But moreover, we want to open doors, particularly for the agents that seek opportunities in those areas. I'm sure that the CEO, in her input, she will elaborate further on that, but it's something that we are indeed working on. So it has received our attention. I've also indicated the issue of the illegal practitioners that are in infestation. That's the word I used earlier on, all over the show. And what we are also looking at, it's foreign nationals, without even saying illegal foreign nationals, but looking at the foreign nationals in general, because in terms of the South African legal framework, when a person comes to South Africa, it's on a basis of a visa. And that visa will allow you to do certain things. What we know is that if you want to do business in South Africa, there has got to be a special permit that Home Affairs grants to you for you to do business. And there are certain requirements. And we have just started to say, hold on a minute, we need to make sure that people are also complying with these requirements so that it's not just a party for all and sundry, let alone those that are illegal. It's a matter that we are also concerned about, and it's something that we are indeed attending to. Those are the few things that I thought I should speak to. But board members, I think I must also hear your voices. Oh, the minister is rescuing you. It's okay. Tato.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start from the bottom and I'll work my way up. Mbulelo James, he was my classmate from first grade until matric, so I'm very happy to see you here after all these years. The issue around decentralization of work, the minister did approve the organogram for the PPRA last year in September, and the idea is to do just that. So there will be offices in where there's a concentration of property practitioners. So for example, there will be an office in KZN. There is an office in the Western Cape that we're trying to expand, and obviously the Free State, and those fall under the purview of the COO. So it will be phased in, hopefully in the third quarter, we will start opening up offices in those areas. The NSFAS one, I'll have the minister tackle it, is that okay? And then there was a question or a comment around illegal foreign nationals. It is noted, say. Then there was a question on the other side around bank panels. How come we don't get work for bank panels? I have challenged one of the major banks because I said, we give you business, but every time you have stock, our practitioners don't get. So we are having those conversations, and I'll ensure that we do follow through, because it is a concern, because you are putting more money into the hands of people who already have money, who already have stock, who already have a database. And I really do feel that there needs to be a representation of black SMMEs in the sector. So that one, you have my word on it. Not like you don't have my word on other things, but I am following up on that, SIPO. Minister, I'll let you answer. Well, let me not delegate, I'm sorry. Let me stay in my lane. Then there was an issue around the trust account. So if there are conveyancers in the room, they are going to kill me for saying this. But as property practitioners, as a principal, we are not saying close your trust accounts. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying in the new regime, if you don't sell, for example, because there are those tenants who just do rentals, for example, who are not necessitated to have a trust account. But if you are a sales property practitioner and you do have a trust account, do use it, right? And I know it also has to do with a lot of consumer awareness, because a lot of potential buyers or even sellers out there don't know that as a property practitioner, you can have your money put in your trust account, provided that you have a 3PIM account that is audited. But as a practitioner myself, you are attracting liability. Can we agree? But if you are competent, yes, you do use it. So I just wanted to clarify that point that Advocate Deborah made, saying you don't have to use a trust account. If that was your understanding, I just wanted to clarify that. Services CETA, Joseph, maybe, if I may, through you, Minister, maybe just answer it. Why do we use services CETA and not necessarily practitioners to train some of your, and I think maybe Sipo was alluding to, like RPL programs? Is that what you're alluding to? If you can just touch on it, why use services CETA? I honestly don't have an answer to that. And then I think I'll stop there for now. If you can just come in on the and was that yes, around that's the chairperson for NPCC. Just well, I do concede to the speed of execution, but it's not an excuse. We should be intentional about just accelerating some of the programs under Transformation Fund. And I did mention in my opening around just the candidacy program that has now taken off the ground. And maybe, Joseph, you can just expand more on the other 3 programs and the timelines thereof. Thanks.
Acting CEO, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen.
Don't. I still have to answer.
Oh, sorry.
There are issues that before you take over, Program Direct, we've taken your time, I know. But there are issues that I think I should answer directly. I know Tato spoke about the issue of the banks in terms of the work. I do engage with the banks through Banking Association of South Africa. One of the issues, I think the time frame as well is important, but one of the things that we had to agree with, which is being done now, was previously, if you remember, majority of the companies would not register in the database where you would be allocated when they resell the properties, which now they did. I think it started, especially when they were dealing with the issues around COVID-19, people who could not afford the houses. I think you would know that. And then they started increasing the number of people they would have on their database to be able to allocate. Quite a number of people were not there. We saw the list in terms of the number of people, in terms of increase. But I think what I think Sipo is raising is the time it takes to be given or allocated. That other companies are given 6 months as a lead, whereas they, as small businesses, are given 3 weeks, which we'll have to take up with the banks in terms of that. The second issue, I think, around proactiveness, there's quite a lot of work that we are doing in terms of ensuring that we proactively, that's why I spoke about the conversation within the portfolio on just allocating as part of transformation to where we fund through SHRA and NHFC. There's that work, and I think they are here in the afternoon, NHFC specifically, to be able to talk about that, so that we utilize that platform as transformational issues, getting SMMEs and all those to sell those properties. And this is the work that I said the CEO is driving. And then there's an issue that Vuiswa raises around link. What we have done, resuscitated, for example, in the portfolio, forums of the portfolio. One, in terms of whether you have CEOs forums, chaired by the DG with all the CEOs on the portfolio. You have CFOs forum that is chaired by the CFO of the department, and then communication forum. So those 3, I insisted when I got into the portfolio that those forums must be so that there's sharing of information, but ensuring that within the same portfolio we have interlinked between the work that we are doing. There's an issue around being treated like stepchildren. I think the issue for me has been around platforms that are created, and that's why we said we agreed on this platform. Previously, there's not been a platform created for engagement, and I hear that there was. But when I checked with the department whether there has been an engagement between minister and the sector, and I was told there hasn't been. So it's not completely true that we're doing things the same way as old. Yes, we might have taken time to implement, for example, the transformational fund. We've had conversation, I've had to answer in Parliament why after 6 months have passed, we've not implemented. It's all those that we take cognizance of and we take responsibility, I think, and acknowledge, as the CEO has said. Now, coming to the issue of a committee, I don't want to sit here and lie. I'm not going to do the committee, colleagues. I have a board that I've appointed to do the work. They must do the work. If they can't do the work, they are going to have to excuse us and we appoint the board. That's the law. Because if I start doing anything else outside the law, it's going to be a problem. I hate bureaucracy, naturally. Creating committees on top of committees never solves the problem. Increases bureaucracy. When we appoint the board, we call for public nomination. Everybody has to apply. Players, everybody. We've done that. I have appointed the board. The minute I appoint a committee, I'm saying I have no confidence in my board. I cannot do that as a minister. I want to be honest with you. I'm one person, that's what you'd get with me. Everybody knows. A weakness I have is that God didn't give me diplomacy. I call things as they are. And I do not make false promises. I make commitments on what I know I'll be able to do. So what I expect from the board is this one, is that the board will interact with you, because I've appointed them to do that. They will interact with you, where their feedback, you will have these platforms with me as I committed, but I can't create a committee on top of the committee I have. This committee is expected to interact with you, get feedback, and implement what we have agreed upon. Because the law does not say, if you look at the chapters in the Act itself, where it talks about transformation and the transformation fund, it's chapter 4, section 20. It doesn't give me powers to go and appoint an advisory or a committee beyond what I've appointed. So there are laws and there are rules that we've got to be able to operate within. I'm one person that wants to operate within the prescripts of the law and the policies, so that tomorrow, when I'm asked, why did you do that, I can answer. If I'm taken to court, I can answer. So I hope that would be understood in the spirit that I'm saying. Let's all hold our board accountable, together holding the executive there accountable. We have committed, I committed when I came to the portfolio, on stabilizing the portfolio, ensuring that we have a board that is fit and proper, ensuring that we appoint people in the board, even from practitioners that are coming from the sector. The reason the acting CEO is doing so well, and I said, I'm proud of the decision we took, is because she's been a practitioner in the sector. She came in, she knows what the problem she faced, and she's solving those problems. That's what is important. What we need to do is to give confidence. Let's support them, colleagues. That's my appeal. Let's support them to be able to move. And thank you, Vuiswa, for the feedback that there is a light in the end of the tunnel. You can see the improvement. What we need is the agency and speed improvement, so that we can implement better. And I think the feedback about that we must speak, we must walk the talk. Let's not talk about transformation, but not act about transformation. The choices that we make where we are going to have our meetings, the venues that we choose, the people that we utilize must speak to that. And that's the message that we are here about, and that's what we're hearing, and in what we are saying. So the law speaks about what we need to do in terms of property sector and transformation. If we look at chapter 20, 21, it talks about what we need to do in terms of the issues around the fund. Now, here there is a leeway that can be utilized to close the gap in terms of what other people have raised. If you look at the Property Sector Transformation Fund, Section 21, subsection 2, it says the minister may prescribe measures to promote economic transformation by facilitating accessibility of finance for property ownership, property development, and investment in order to enable meaningful participation of historically disadvantaged individuals, including women, youth, and people with disability. So there it does prescribe that minister can put measures. So we could utilize that where there are gaps and close those gaps through that. And that's what I'm saying. As we work, let's understand we operate within the law. Minister is not above the law, can't do things outside the law that is prescribed. Thank you very much. Program Director, you can come back. Oh, sorry, even on the issue of service on the SETA is prescribed by the law. If you look in that chapter, section 21, subsection 4, you'll see that the authority must, so it doesn't say may, must, in consultation with the services SETA, develop special dispensation for training and development of the historically disadvantaged, which must include recognition of priority. So there are prescriptions that are must for us. It's not optional. It will help us to familiarize ourselves more intensely with the Act, because that's what I expect PPRA to operate within, not outside what the Act says. Once they do that, I crack the whip. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, and thank you for taking one of my questions that I was going to answer. So I think perhaps what I should acknowledge from the outset before I respond to, just briefly, to the questions raised around transformation, I need to acknowledge that there's a lot that is happening now. Perhaps what we're not doing is to communicate that which has been done to the industry and the members of the public. Now, the issue around which programs are ran by the PPRA in response to the transformation mandate, I thought I alluded to the list of programs that are currently underway, being the candidacy program, where we are intending to produce principals, but we are also, more importantly, not just pipelining these people to be future principals, because again, there was also a concern that we're not focusing on the existing principals. We are, because the people that are currently training these people to become principals are the existing principals. Perhaps if you are not part of the program, it's just a question of you not actually having participated in the space. The work readiness is another program where we're running the one learner, and we were asked as to how many learners we have. I've answered that during the presentation, that we have 358 learners in 8 provinces. We are going to begin running the same program in the Northern Cape with the assistance of Rosen. There was also a question around why Rosen. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we engage, and those that are willing to be party to the transformation agenda, we visited Northern Cape. We asked who are the black practitioners in the space with the necessary expertise, given the technical nature of what they would need to impart as skills to these young people joining the sector. We couldn't find one. And we are also still inviting those that are in the Northern Cape that can actually help us to transform the sector. It was not something that we just decided that we're going to go to Rosen. We invited different property practitioners in the area. Then only Rosen pitched in the Northern Cape. That's how we got to that decision. The issue around incubation and SMME, I indicated that we are intending to roll this out to select 12 companies that will also be part of the program, but the balance of 13 is subject to us securing funding to get to 25. I just thought that we need to actually just make sure that, yes, there are concerns, but I feel that we are being assessed based on history. Just give us time, we'll come back and do a report back, and hopefully it will be a rosy picture. But right now we acknowledge that unfortunately, given the past, we are actually walking against the tide. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now supposed to go on lunch, but there are questions that are actually coming from online. Perhaps what we should do, Chairperson, with your guidance, we can take the last round of questions, but there are also questions from online. I would suggest that we prioritize those that are online because we have not given them a chance at all. And then after that, we can obviously go for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. We are due for lunch, and I'm sure you are all starving because some of you are here at 8:30. So we will do it in this manner. We'll go to lunch, and then when we come back, there is a session later on for question and answers again after the panelists, and then that's when the Minister will also then engage some of your questions. And then we'll address the ones that are from the people who are streaming online. And then also just around regulations, when the Minister did her opening earlier, she spoke on, if you've got questions, burning questions or issues around the regulations, what you'd like to see, because she's the only one who has the power to change the regulations. So I think maybe when we come back, let's, shift our mindset in that regard. Thank you.
Hello? Ladies and gentlemen, lunch is actually just outside this wall here. There are people outside to direct you to the venue. Please, let's have lunch, but I suggest that we actually have an hour lunch and then we can come back and then start again. Thank you. They refused. Oh.
Recording stopped.
Epidemic Sound is basically a royalty-free soundtrack company. So it's where I go to when I want to get